And then I think we have everyone that is joining from staff.
Councilmember Medina and I are on. We are transitioning from a prior commitment, so I think we're both we're both on our phones as well, trying to navigate that. So apologies for that.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Sure,
Is
I'm on.
anybody else, is there anyone from staff that it looks like we're missing? I'll ask Laura.
I think we have everyone, Councilmember Coombs.
Okay, great. Then we'll go ahead and start. So my name is Alison Coombs. I am the Aurora City Council member representing Ward 5 and the chair of this committee. Welcome to our meeting for October. And we'll start with the approval of the minutes. Council members Murillo and Medina. Do you have any changes? I'm like, actually, now I'm confirming. Yes, we didn't meet, but so we didn't approve the minutes last week. Sorry. Any changes to the current minutes?
None for me.
Okay. Seeing
Yeah,
none.
no changes to the August meeting minutes for me either.
Okay. Thank you both. Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on, or those will stand approved as written, and we'll move on to our library board annual presentation.
Ines, do you want to share the presentation then? I'm just looking at your note, or would you like me to?
Whichever is easier for you. I have it up if you want me to share.
That would be fantastic.
Great.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we have the presentation up. So Midori, are you gonna introduce, or are folks gonna go ahead and jump on it?
I will go ahead and introduce Paula Vargas, who will be doing the presentation today, and let her take it away. Paula is the chair of our library board. She's been a very active board member for several years now, and Paula, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. We appreciate the time to update you on what is happening at the library. We're going to start a little bit with a historical background on how the Aurora Public Library began. In 1925, the Aurora Women's Club organized and created what we now know to be the Aurora Public Library. It funded the library by hosting bake sales, tea parties, plays, and charging the audience about 25 cents for adults and 15 cents, and ultimately fundraising about $171. With those funds, the library at 1516 Dallas opened on February 10th, 1929, and dedicated the library the following October to Mr. A.T. Swedenborg. Am I pronouncing that right, Midori? So his wife, Margie, devoted 35 years of service to the library board. The first librarian was a woman by the name of Sarah Wood, who served from 1929 to 1939. And in the next slide, we'll show you a few pictures of the libraries around the city. You'll notice the Central Public Library, Hoffman Library on Peoria Street, Mission Viejo Library on Hampton, and a few other favorites. And then we move on to the Library and Culture Services and what it oversees in the offices, which is about 7 offices. So we have the administration office, we have art and public places, we have arts programs, culture services division administration, historic services, library collections management and systems, library facilities and public services. And what you are seeing in this page is an overview of its expenditures. In 2023, it was about, what I'm seeing is 10 million there. And the next slide, you'll see how all of this comes together. And we put some numbers together for you dating pre-pandemic. So in 2019, it's off to the far right. You'll see these numbers are pretty high. That was pre-pandemic. And then we hit COVID, and the numbers started going down where we all were restricted from going to places in person. And so this really impacted the numbers of the library. You'll notice in-person visits went down dramatically. And as we began to rejoin the world and go back outdoors and visit places in person, the numbers have started to go up. In 2022, it's almost at 500,000. The circulations, you'll notice, before pre-pandemic, we're almost exceeding where we were then for circulations, also for program attendees. Computer use is slowly gaining its usage. Again, this is in person, just like the library visits is slowly getting back up to where we were. And the staff is continuing to work on that. And we'll discuss that in the next slide. But they have done a really amazing job in being able to keep the attention of their audience and being able to pull them in online, where they really took advantage of this when we were all restricted from going out, and they continue to bring them in online. So I'm really proud of them for that. In addition to that, the library cards have exceeded where we were pre-pandemic. So yay to them for that. I'm pretty proud of them. And the next slide, you'll notice the milestones so far. The library staff launched this Reimagine Aurora Public Library campaign. So this year they went away with the fees that were once charged. And this brought people back in and brought back some of those books that they were still hanging on to and encouraged them to check more books out. So we're really proud of that. They expanded their hours at Central Talon's Reach, although right now we are temporarily reducing the hours for the remainder of the year because of vacancies. We're short on staff. So to be able to help with that, we reduce the hours, but we're still encouraging people to obviously come in. We also had the grand opening of the Chambers Plaza. We had the grand opening of the Bookmobile, and the limited edition of the library card, where you saw in the prior slide with those library cards, those numbers went up. We're pretty proud of that. In addition to that, we had $2.5 million dedicated to the MLK library expansion, which was funded by congressional spending dollars. And City Communications also created a new library marketing identity. And last but not least, on November 4th, the library will be hosting its first ever gala fundraising for the Aurora Public Library called the Katrina Ball. So it'll be in recognition of Dia de los Muertos. So we're bringing a lot of people together and getting them into the library and really showcasing them that the library can do more than just the books that it hosts, which identified that in the prior slides, bringing people in online. And so I'm really proud of the staff, of all the milestones that they've accomplished this year alone, and recognizing that they really are still recovering from the pandemic, and they're doing such an amazing job. So that's really all of the updates that I have. I do want to give Midori an opportunity to jump in if there's something that I missed or maybe overlooked.
I think you covered it. Thank you, Paula.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you so much for your presentation, and very excited to see all of the things that are happening at the library. So I guess as a board, what are your guys' goals? Because I know these were a lot of kind of staff-driven goals and projects. So what are your goals as a board?
As a board is really to help Midori and her team get the word out, not just in the community, but also attending council. And one of our goals was to really host this fundraiser. And so that was a heavy lift that we were able to, well, we were able to make it happen really because of Midori's vision, and being able to say, yes, I think we can do it, and being able to take that on as a board and volunteering all of our time to make this happen. This Katrina Ball is truly all volunteer hours. So I'm looking forward to the evening, and I'm looking forward to wrapping it up, to be honest. But I'm really excited for the city and for the board, and truly for the library.
I think Paula's
Awesome.
being extremely modest. This Katrina Ball was her idea, and she brought it to the board and was really interested in doing a fundraiser for the library that would help us raise money for programming and other types of things that are underfunded. So it was her idea and her vision to do this, and she got a lot of support from the board, and we as staff also wanted to support it as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited about that. I'm excited to attend, and it definitely does look like a wonderful event. So happy to see what unfolds on the 4th. And then what are the ways in which we can, as a council, be supportive of your activities as a board, and the things that you really need to be supportive of the libraries?
Yes. Thank you so much for asking that. I think mentioning us, not just when you host one of your council meetings, right, but also if you have a newsletter, if you could also include us, and then encouraging and redirecting others to visit our website, or even show up in person and ask questions. We want to continue to bring those numbers up and really bring people into the library. There's so many programs that are helpful to them. It's not just the books, but it's also being able to redirect them to some tools and resources within the city that they truly need, especially during this economy. One of the reasons that I joined the board is because I'm a first generationer, and my parents were at the library consistently for everything, whether they needed assistance for health, or they needed assistance relocating, or they needed assistance in increasing our ability to learn the English language, right? So that is something that I advocate for. And if that's something that you can do for your constituents, I think that would be a tremendous help, redirecting them to us, whether it's on the website or in person.
Great. Thank you so much. Council members Murillo and Medina, do you have any questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm really, thank you for the presentation. I commend you for the work that you're doing, and frankly for the idea for the Katrina Ball. Like, I don't often feel like I have a connection with some of the events that we host. Not that they're not, great events and well put on, but just like a deeper level of connection from like a cultural and heritage standpoint. When I first learned about it, I was just like super surprised that we would host something like that, and I'm super excited to be joining. So just want to commend you on that. And there are other cities that use Dia de los Muertos or celebrate Dia de los Muertos, for example, on a larger scale, right? There are places in Texas where they have a large Latino population like we do in Aurora, and specifically in Ward 1, where they have like a parade for Dia de los Muertos, like a community building, a community gathering opportunity that is culturally relevant. So I would love to see us continue to take advantage of those opportunities. And who knows, maybe next year we'll have a Katrina Ball and a Dia de los Muertos like parade or something that could support with fundraising as well. But also like a way to build community and culture in a really significant way. So thank you for all of your work, Paula.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. And on the heels of that, as I was making phone calls to raise funds, right, and get some sponsorships in, I heard that from several entities that were interested in the same thing. They were voicing the same that you were, and excited to that we're doing this. Some were not familiar with the culture, one, and the holiday, and so they were very excited to be asked to be a part of it and attending. And so this is a way, as I mentioned, not just bringing people into the library and getting them familiar with it, but also expanding on that and including others in the culture, which is really what Aurora is about, and the public library. So thank you so much for mentioning that.
Yeah, and consider me a partner if y'all want to take on the other idea for Dia de los Muertos parade next year. However, I can help resource that from my council perspective to support your fundraising or volunteer. Let me know.
Thank you so much. I'll hold you to that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Murillo. Councilmember Medina?
Yes, kudos to everything that you're doing, Paula, and staff, Midori as well. Yeah, I mean, I certainly champion everything that's happening, and certainly any opportunity you guys want to present at any of my town halls, let me know. I'm happy to have you come and talk about programs that you have, and if there is some literature that you have, I'm happy to get that and put those out at my council town halls as well. So any way that I can support as well, I'll help out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, any other questions or comments that anybody would like to share? All right, well, thank you again so much for joining us, and again for setting up the Katrina Ball. I think we're all, as council, very excited, and I know I've heard other excitement within the within the rest of the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. And I just lost my agenda. I apologize. So I'm just gonna have to pull it back up. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so then we also have our Aurora Fox annual report with Rich Cowden, and then Tim Joyce also is available on this item.
Great.
And
Thank you.
Jessica, were you also gonna?
I was just
share?
going to introduce Rich.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I'm Jessica Johnson. I have been on the Aurora Fox Advisory Board for 2.5 years, and last year I became the chair. We had kind of an uncertain year for the Fox with staff turnover, but the board and the staff really stayed committed to helping the theater, and the board helping the staff excuse me, with programming and events and keeping those things going, and our commitment to diversity and inclusive programming. We have a new energized patron services manager. The planned renovations for the neon on the marquee are moving forward. And season 39 is going to kick off next year. And our next big show is the Motowns and Jerseys Hi-Fi Holiday, which is been a big hit. We've done it before. That starts December 7th, and I encourage you to get tickets. There's only 6 shows. And I will now turn it over to Rich, our new executive producer, and we are really excited about him.
Thank you, Jessica. That's very nice of you to say. Hopefully I can earn that. Council members, thank you very much for having us today. Especially Councilmember Coombs, thanks for your support and rallying some council sponsorship around our gala. That was really great, wonderfully helpful. Inas, if you could just share my very text-heavy presentation, I'll sort of gloss over some things rather than doing a lecture. You all can read what's there, but because I didn't realize that slides needed to be uploaded in eScribe. It's not as pretty as the libraries, but I will tell you that I've decided to present the entire thing as a Broadway musical. No, that's a joke. Next year, maybe next year. But I do want to just kind of go with some highlights and talk about, a little bit about where we've been and kind of where we are now and where I hope to be going pretty quickly in the future. So I included some attendance and revenue data. And, this is an interesting look because this will be a little bit different than what you have seen probably in other reports, primarily because we have the Fox Interlude going on right now. So the sort of scope and scale and amount of programming that we're offering between the end of May and the beginning of 2024 is quite heavy, and that's atypical for us. It's a little bit of background there if you don't know exactly how that came to pass. The previous leadership, I think, wisely decided with the finance office and LCS to align the Fox's season with the city's fiscal year. So rather than going with a season from September until about May or June, which is really hard to budget and forecast, starting in 2024, season 39 will actually be aligned. So it'll start the beginning of the year and end at the end of the calendar year. So in the meantime, they wisely crafted the Fox Interlude that's taken us through the end of the year. So we have a lot of different kinds of events that have been going on in addition to the main stage shows. So we just finished a really great run of Blues in the Night in the Studio Theater, as well as some guest things. We hosted Cinderella from Panto USA Theater Company for schools. We've hosted the Aurora Rhythms Zodiac Trio recently. We just hosted Dava's Young Filmmakers Night on Friday, which was a huge success. Always is. It's always great to partner with them. So there's a lot more programming in this than you'll see probably usually. That said, one of the things that I want to focus on today is really looking at the Fox and opportunities that we have to grow back into what I think the Fox should be. It's been a couple of months now, so it's an interesting process putting an annual report together for someplace you've been for 2 months. But it was a really good exercise for me because it allowed me to go back several years into data and really kind of look at trends in terms of Fox attendance that was obviously hugely affected by the pandemic, but also just some programming decisions that have been made that I think we can probably expand on and open up a little bit more. So, sorry, I'm just scrolling through my own things here. As I said, we still have a lot of things left. Like Jessica mentioned, we've got a number of events left in 2023. The Motones is going to be fantastic. We have a number of cabarets left. Cultural concerts will be in there. A couple more cabarets, and then we're ending the year with Shelvis, who is a She Elvis impersonator. So we're going to expect to see you all there for a while on New Year's Eve. And then we'll roll into season 39. I do want to give a little bit of a shout out, though, to the Fox staff and the board, specifically because, as Jessica mentioned, there's been a lot of turnover and there's been a lot of sort of uncertainty around Fox from a staffing and leadership perspective over the last year and a half or so. But I will say that the folks who were there, Helen and Bo, before they left, really left the place in very good shape. And the staff that remained, especially, I got to give a big shout out to Jen Orff and Brandon Case, who were basically running the theater by themselves for almost a year. And in the process of doing that, you can see that we do have a number of artistic achievements that I've listed for season 38. They were able to still continue to observe COVID protocols, bringing people back into the theater. They reopened the studio theater, which is a tremendous thing for us. And there's one bullet point there that I forgot to insert a number that I want to make very clear, that nobody was offering XXX performances by local artists. That was actually a placeholder that I put in there. That number should actually be 5. And so continuing to partner with Dava and other external and internal stakeholders to provide programming. And so they were just continuing to churn along as we're trying to regroup from the pandemic. Now, one thing that I will say, performing arts organizations around the metro area and around the country are still struggling to get live attendance back post-pandemic. I think that was exacerbated a little bit by shrinking the Fox's programming really to focus around the 5 or 6 main stage performances. So one of the opportunities that I think we really have right now is to continue to open that up, diversify the programming, and reestablish the Fox as a community space, a community gathering space. I can't tell you how many people I run into just in the immediate neighborhood right along the Colfax corridor that walk by and have no idea what's in there. And that breaks my heart. It makes me really redouble my personal belief that this should be the community's gathering space, and it should never be some place that somebody walks by and thinks that is not for me. And so we're really going to focus on a lot of that, and I'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. Moving into some of our marketing and social media, that continues to grow back, which is great. We have almost 200,000 reach in Facebook and 6,000 followers. Chelsea Jones, who is our marketing strategist that we share with LCS, is another tremendous addition to the team. She's been there since January. She's got a great handle on social media and really pushing this out. We're going to really focus a lot on our electronic presence and social media presence over the next year. So we're going to push through Facebook and Instagram. But one of the things we've talked a lot about is just generating more original content. And that's through video. So whether that's interviews with directors or time lapse of a set being built, or interviews with audience members on the way out of a show, just continuing to push content out there, because that's how we'll get our followers up, and that's how that marketing reach will happen. We've got a lot of great press coverage. I was very flattered and pleasantly surprised how many outlets covered up my appointment into this position. And so you can see the bullet list there. We're going to continue to try to push that out as well. Talked about Fox Interlude a little bit. So again, number of bullet points that are specific to the interlude. But again, really kudos to the Fox staff for A, thinking of that idea, B, adjusting the season calendar, and C, making it happen. For a group of people who are used to producing events that rehearse for 6 weeks and then run for 4 or 5 weeks, the idea of having multiple events coming in, sometimes multiple events a week, has been a big shift for them, and they've handled it very, very well. It's certainly kept Chelsea on her toes because she is marketing myriad events all the time, but the staff has really done a fantastic job. Also, big kudos to our board, who continues to really support the Fox. We are growing the board. We have 3 new applicants to the board, one of whom has just been approved, and we're waiting on the other 2 to come to a meeting. So my goal is really to build the board out, and I've talked to Jessica about this a lot, and Don Garibaldi about this a lot. Build the board out to where we have 11, 13 people there, so we can start to break that up into subcommittees, get people that are really interested in the fundraising piece on the fundraising piece, get people who are interested in that visibility and awareness and diversity piece on those kind of pieces. And so we're really working to try to flesh the board out. I think there's a lot of excitement around that. I'm jumping down to where I listed staffing, operational, and philosophical changes. And I think that just the big overview there is what I mentioned before, which is that the Fox, in my mind, should absolutely be a cultural, institutional landmark on the East Colfax corridor. It should be a driver for community engagement and inclusiveness. It should be a driver for economic development and revitalization. I've spent a lot of time with Aaron Vega over the last couple weeks, a few weeks here. Had a great talk with Jason Batchelor the other day about these things. And I think we're all in alignment that if we can continue to, with supportive council, specifically Council Member Murillo in Ward 1, really continue to try to brighten up that area, focus on personal safety and security. I think that can be a shining star of Aurora. I think it can be a shining star of the metro area. And to me, the Fox is key in that, because it's a place where people can come, they can gather, they can have a shared experience, they can sit next to somebody they've never met before, never would meet otherwise, and take that into the community with them. So I think one of the things that I have really, really been blown away by is how willing people in the community are to step up and help. People want to support the Fox. They love the Fox. They want to contribute time or energy or resources or money. We have spent a lot of time over the last couple of months trying to reach out to some of our partnerships that had kind of gone a little bit dormant over the last few years, bringing partners back like Fitzsimmons Credit Union. We're working on establishing a really nice partnership with the Benson Hotel and Faculty Club. They just offered us cheaper rooms than Motel 6 to have the Cinderella cast stay there. And so we're planning on doing some events with them and just really trying to build that back out. Stanley Marketplace is within walking distance, basically, of the Fox, trying to think about what partnerships we might have with restaurants there, bringing those things back. But every single person that I've talked to says, yes, I'm so glad the Fox is stabilizing. I'm so glad that you guys are open. Looking forward to what you're doing. And that's just been a really, really great thing. So a couple of things just here at the end there under planning. One of the things that's really nice is the Super Friends team is now fully assembled at the Fox. So we have everybody in place, from our marketing folks to our front of house to patron services. Like I said, we're building out the board. Jen and Brandon and the technical staff remain rock solid and in place. So we're going to move forward full steam ahead. A few things that we're going to be working on specifically, as mentioned a couple minutes ago. We just had a great meeting last week with the Da Vinci Sign folks, and thank you very much to council for moving that forward. So that work should start on the neon and sign restoration pretty soon here. As soon as that goes to contract and procurement, well, they want to start work pretty quickly and finish that by March. Big shout out also to Scott Williams and Chris Geddes at Historical Preservation and the Museum for being on top of that for a long time and seeing that to fruition. So we're really excited about that. We're also looking with Christina on the staff in the grants office, and also with Chris Geddes on the possibility of looking at some other grants, whether those are vis-a-vis historical preservation or private foundations such as Gates Family Foundation, to try to do some other capital improvement projects on the Fox. Everything from as seemingly mundane as important to HVAC, also to maybe some facade renovations, with the big idea over the next several years being try to build out a shared lobby space that could be shared with both of the theaters, establish a new bathroom space, and then do that without impacting the historical landmark, but also by trying to bring that space into the 21st century a little bit. So that's a big project. It'll take a few years, but we're looking at that. Talked about expanding the board, which is fantastic. And one of my big priorities is to diversify our programming in such a way that not only are we looking at a more diverse group of productions in our main stage season, which, by the way, season 39 already features. Season 39 has everything from an off-Broadway niche comedy called Art, all the way up through, we are partnering with the library on the presentation production of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the musical, to try to promote literacy and also engagement in performing arts. Really want to bring some of those things back, but also include more music series, also include comedy. We're talking about possibly getting on the open mic circuit to get more comedy in the space. Eventually, what I'd love to be able to do is have free live community events, such as live sporting events. If we could get Comcast on board to waive license fees for us and come in as a sponsor, to be able to show things like the World Cup final, the World Series Game 7, Avalanche and Nuggets playoff games. I would say Broncos and Rockies, but we'll just leave that there for the time being. And really just be able to bring people into the space that, again, don't feel like they've historically belonged there or been invited there or been welcome there. And that really is a part of neighborhood revitalization. So, and then we're working very hard to create a comprehensive marketing strategy for 2024, figure out where our potential audiences might be, who they are, where they live, how can we find them, beyond just sending countless numbers of mailers and emails. Really doing some targeted marketing and some creative things around there. And then another one of my big priorities is really getting back into children's programming. In the summers specifically, we're looking at bringing back the Little Foxes program, and or also restarting some conversations with the Burrell School about maybe starting something that looks like a theater academy partnership between the Burrell and the Fox in the summers. So we're going to restart those conversations pretty quickly. And that's pretty much what I have. I could go on for hours because I'm a big champion of the Fox. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity, and I think we are on a very good course. And I thank everybody for their support, and we're really looking forward to the future.
All right, thank you so much. And it seems like you really haven't done much or looked at much in the 2 months that you've been here. So, no, that's incredible just looking at the vision and the strategy for moving forward and coming really out of the pandemic. So thank you so much for hitting the ground running and just bringing all those ideas forward. I have several questions, but I'm going to go ahead and see if first Councilmember Medina has any questions or Councilmember Murillo. So Councilmember Medina.
Thank you for the presentation. And yeah, it seems like you've been pretty busy getting the ground running, sounds like. No, I certainly like all the different aspects of the planning of this theater itself, and then looking at the diversity of the community and being more inclusive of getting more of that population engaged in the theater. And I can tell you from my own personal experiences, not having grown up with a lot of that, and I was introduced to it later when my wife took me to one the first time, and so I've been frequenting them yearly because of that. So yeah, there's opportunities, I think, that to look at and get more diverse communities coming to these plays and things of that nature. So I appreciate that, and let us know how we can support that.
Thank you, Councilmember Medina. That's very much appreciated. We'll definitely lean on you.
Councilmember Murillo.
Thank you, Councilmember Coombs. Thank you for the presentation. I'm pleasantly, well, I guess I'm not surprised. I don't know you very well, so I can't be surprised by anything in this regard, but I'm impressed to hear the updates that you've shared. I'm excited for the vision you're bringing, as a council member and consumer, right? That's my district. I live here. I'm there all the time. Some of the ideas that you mentioned really resonated with me, if that gut check matters. So I just wanted to uplift that and share my excitement. I'm looking forward to continuing to partner. I've had town halls in the Fox once upon a time. I'm happy to think through what that might look like in the future, the next year as we're finalizing that schedule, but maybe there's a time where that makes sense. I can bring folks to the venue and all of the above. I'm a big fan. I'm also, big fan and believer in the access to this type of resource from a public domain standpoint. So you have my support kind of through and through, and especially when it comes to activating the area. One of my big priorities is around community wealth building, having some Councilmember Medina and I having some active conversations with the city and various stakeholders in the area on how we continue to direct growth and development and change in the district with the lens of community wealth building, so that it can continue to be accessible to everyone. So Richard, let me know how I can continue to support your work, and thank you for your presentation.
I will absolutely let you know, and just hit us up at any point and we'll figure out when we can get a town hall in there. That civic engagement piece is a huge passion project of mine as well. So especially these days when there's so much divisiveness, anytime we can get people in to have civil conversations around civic issues, I'm all about it. I think that's an important thing that a theater can do for its community. It's not just a place for art, it's a place for conversation.
Awesome. Well, then I have another thought that I will bring to you offline for probably sometime in November, although you guys look like you have a pretty busy November schedule. But we can follow up on that. Thank you, Councilmember Murillo and Councilmember Medina. I had a few kind of more detail specific questions. One of them was also about kind of bringing folks into the space, specifically council I think that a lot of our council does not understand well what the Fox does or what I actually felt like I knew quite a bit about the Fox because I'd been out there a few times, but then when I came to the gala and we were in the outside space, I was like, oh, what? I didn't even know this was a space that we had as part of this theater. So I think setting up some type of an event in the new year to educate council and maybe bring in some other community leaders to give them an idea of like what is here at the Fox and how could we possibly plug in and be more engaged as leaders, right? Because then that helps bring in more folks from the community. So Jessica, it sounds like you maybe have a thought on that.
I do. One of the things we've talked about as a board is we want to go to the ward meetings and tell city council members and tell the community that shows up at the ward meetings what programming is coming up and stuff like that. And that's one of the big things that the board is going to focus on this year. So hopefully that will help with that.
Yeah, and I know our Ward 5 board member has come to meetings and has spoken at our meetings because I always give all of the board and commission representatives a little bit of time to give any updates that they may have. But I was thinking more about getting council directly into the space as well, because again, I think there's something different about abstractly hearing like, oh, we're going to have all these programs and actually physically being there and seeing what's going on. And also what you don't see. Like if you go to a main stage show, you don't see the Black Box Theater. And if you go to either of those, you don't necessarily see the outdoor space. So just to help council have a sense of that vision and ways that the community could engage. And again, other community leaders and partners who might from the area who might have ideas about how to plug in.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic set of ideas, and building on it even further, a lot of times the Fox isn't doing much during the day. I mean, we're all working, but the building itself is sitting empty, and so I'm also looking at other daytime opportunities. It's what a great space to be able. We have limited breakout space, but if somebody wants to do an annual meeting there, or if somebody wants to have a smaller, kind of conference. Over the last couple of weeks, I hosted the PACE group in there, and then last week we hosted the Historic Preservation Commission. So, it's just getting, again, I love the idea of just getting people in the space, because every time somebody walks in there for the first time, especially if they get the whole tour and like you said, they see the whole facility and how it works, they're blown away, and that's something we want to leverage.
Absolutely. And so then my other question is a little bit following on from that, which is with respect to the idea of further renovations, which I think absolutely makes sense and we should do. With that outdoor kind of courtyard space and the space in general, are there ways to kind of, even if the historic preservation isn't like making it exactly like it was at X, Y, or Z date, just kind of highlighting the architectural style and maybe embellishing that a little bit in some of those additional spaces, just for the attractiveness and also the historic character of the space? Is that kind of the conversation you guys are having?
Yeah, I think very much so. And one of the things that Midori has been great about is, hey, let's look at this. So we've reached out to Semple Brown Architects, who's obviously works with a lot of city projects, but really specializes in that performance space kind of area. And one of their principals, Chris Weinman, is somebody that I've known for decades. And so trying to get Chris out there to do a sort of preliminary walkthrough and have that exact conversation. How do we maintain the historic facade and the architectural look of the place? It's interesting too, because when they built on in 1985 the space that later became the Studio Theater and the Scene Shop, there wasn't an enormous amount of attention to try to unify those, so it really does kind of still look like two buildings. Excuse me. So one of the ideas is to ask the question: how do we integrate both of those things? Maintain the dignity of the space. I've had such a great time learning about the Fox over the last couple of months. I've been a longtime fan and audience member, but there's so much that I didn't know about the fire and the reconstruction and the original partnership with the U.S. Army and why the building was originally built the way it was built. So we want to maintain that, but I totally agree. I think there are ways that we can beautify it, make it more functional, make it more sort of united in terms of its use, and then also not lose a bunch of parking spaces too, because those are valuable. We have disabled parking out there. We also have public art out there. So a lot of those are going to be, big parts of that conversation. But I would definitely agree with your assessment that those are questions that we need to ask.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to having those conversations. And then finally, there was a question or a discussion at the gala with respect to wages and the cost of making sure that we are fairly paying the talent at the theater. And so I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit on what it would look like from a council perspective to make sure that we're fairly paying and then subsequently keeping up with appropriate wages for folks at the Fox.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit of just kind of context how we do that. So we have both union and non-union artists. So we pay the base fee is the same for whether somebody is with equity or somebody is non-equity. Where we pay more is that because our equity contract requires us to pay into their insurance and pension. So those performers end up costing significantly more because we're not paying insurance or pension with non-union performers. So that's just the basic sort of setup of how that works. Within that, we've been paying a sort of standard fee of $350 a week. And so when Jen and I sat down a couple of weeks ago to look at the budget, she's been great about just downloading her brain into mine, which is painful because there's a lot there, but it's good to know. We talked about one of the things that she was really thinking about was how we can increase pay without breaking the bank budgetarily. And so the idea is having shows that don't have 20 people in them, have shows that have 12 people in them or 5 people in them, and be able to pay those people a little bit better. So as we're budgeting, we actually just finished casting the first 2 shows. So Art and Gem of the Ocean are cast. And then we did go ahead and move that 350 a week to 400 a week, which fits in perfectly well with our budget projections for next year and allows us to continue to pay people a fair wage. And that's hugely important. And that's one of the reasons that the Fox gets the best people in town, because they know that the support's there. And I came up through the School of Hard Knocks in Denver theater where, you'd be doing shows for free just to be able to do them, or that nobody ever got you a check, or you're supposed to make a couple $100 and they didn't pay you. That's not the Fox. And so the Fox is a professional theater. And whether somebody's union or non-union, and whether that's a performer or a designer or a director, we want to make sure those wages stay on par and keep the Fox one of the premier places to work. And so it's about compensation and fair treatment. It's also about our inclusivity in terms of how we cast and colorblind casting. And it's ultimately about the experience that people have there, which we want to be absolutely flawless from the moment that somebody auditions to the moment that they walk out on closing night. And the same goes with the customer service piece. So yeah, those are all big time conversations that we're going to keep up with. And we'll keep forecasting and projecting budgets to make sure that that works. And that'll be a big factor in our season selection, is to make sure that we can pay people what they need to be paid.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Obviously we're not in a adding to the budget from the council side position at this time. But I do want us to recognize that those are also workers that are part of our city. And so, moving forward, having some conversations about just what would it look like, what would it cost, what are the ways in which we can ensure that fair pay, and then also to, for example, also provide benefits, payment to non-union employees. So I think those are all some conversations I would be interested in having as we're looking toward the next budget cycle, since this one we're pretty well wrapped up with. Just thinking about ways that we can continue to be supportive and fair. So thank you so much for being forward thinking about ways that you all can do that within the budgetary constraints that already exist. But then we should also be thinking about what is our what is our investment and what can we do as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you. And I think that also aligns perfectly well with the Aurora Arts Ahead plan. Citizens were very clear about their desire for the city to maintain its investment and maintain its facilities, and in addition to building new ones. So I think there's a lot of support for that, and I appreciate yours.
All right, awesome. Well, any further questions or comments for Rich? Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Okay, just gonna pull my agenda back up. So I forgot to go over announcements, and I suspect there may be some. So does anyone have any announcements for upcoming events while we're all still here together? Looking at you, Midori. I guess we heard already about the shows that are happening at the Fox, but
I was just going to say, I think Rich did it. Yes.
and I guess we already talked about the Katrina Ball, so those are some of the big ones. Okay, well, if there are no additional announcements, then do we have any miscellaneous items for consideration? All right, none from Crystal. Councilmember Medina. Okay, and then our next meeting is scheduled for November 22nd, which is Thanksgiving week. So we're not doing that. So the question is, what are we gonna do instead? I don't know if meeting the prior week is an option for folks, or if staff would prefer that we kind of hold everything over from November into December, if that's an option. So I will take your lead on that. Laura, are you?
Yes, Chair Coombs, I think our preference would be to meet Wednesday, November 29th, if that works for the council members.
Oh, sure. I think that works for me. Let me confirm, but I don't see why it would not. Yes, that works for me. Councilmember Medina and Murillo.
Works for me.
Okay. And Councilmember Murillo says in the chat that works for her. Okay, so then we'll go ahead and do that. We'll meet on the 29th at 3:30. All right. Well, I think that's everything then. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your week and weekend. We are adjourned.